What is going on, guys? Vanity here. Welcome to this week's Soundlike tutorial on Kaytranada that you guys requested. The track I will be taking you through is a remake of Kaytranada's Janet Jackson remix, If, that went viral back in 2012. This is what my version sounds like. I think the biggest and most notorious element in Kaytranada's records are his bass lines that seem to be heavily influenced from funk music. This is something I've spent a lot of time getting right, so I could give you guys a solid deconstruction of how it's put together. So this is how the bass line sounds on its own. The easiest way to recreate this sound will be splitting it into two parts, a low bass or sub bass and a more mid-range bass tone. You can see here that that's the method I've gone for. So this is what my sub bass sounds like on its own. And then my mid bass. We'll start with the sub bass. I've made the foundation of the sound in Serum. I say made, although it literally is just a plain sine wave, as you can see here. That's all you really want for the bottom end of your bass tones. Now, I spoke about this in detail in my 808 bass video. It gets more interesting when you start playing around with the distortion to bring out some of the more mid-range tones. Once you've got your sine wave, to turn that into an 808 sound, you need to play with the ADSR. Now, ADSR is an acronym that stands for Attack, Decay, Sustain and Release. You can see the controls down here. To briefly sum up each in a sentence, the attack is the time it takes for the note to reach maximum level. The decay is the time it takes for the note to go from the maximum level to the sustain level. The sustain is the level while the note is held, and the release is the time it takes for the note to fall from the sustain level to silence when released. You want to aim for a similar shape to this for 808s. Little to no attack, midway decay, no sustain, and then the release depends on how fast or slow you want the sound to die out. Now, because of the fast note changes in this bass line, a fast release was desired as it keeps the notes from spilling over one another. I've then got a compressor down here with a slight amount of compression, Ableton's overdrive plugin adding some distortion to the sound. Now, even though I am using a separate mid-bass sound to complement this, I wanted to add a slight amount of distortion to this also. You can see I'm also using the Sound Toys Decapitator plugin. I'll give you a quick before and after so you can hear what the Decapitator plugin is actually doing to the sound. So first we'll have without. And then with. So it's just adding a slight amount of tone to it. Now, the important thing that I want to stress here is that you should be testing if a sound works in a mix, as opposed to just listening to everything in solo. The 808 may not sound great on its own, but it really works in the mix. Oh, I've also got a Max Bass plugin here. Now, for those that don't know, it uses a proprietary signal processing in order to synthesize a new bass sound that you can use to almost sit on top of the already existing bass sound. So it can be heard on earphones or laptop speakers, for example. You could almost call it the little speaker bass. I'll just give you a quick before and after of that so you can hear what the Max Bass is doing to the sound too. So first we'll have without. And then with. It also gives you a little visual guide up here. The mid bass is then just a straight copy with some more distortion on, as well as cutting away all the frequencies under 150Hz to keep it out of the way of the sub bass. I've got a whole video on bass processing that you can check out if you want to delve further into this subject. So a similar bass sound could also be made using a filtered square wave and layering it with a sine wave, perhaps an octave lower. I like to make it as two separate sounds and then blend them together, as I find it slightly easier for my own workflow, and it also gives me more control over the sound, but it's down to your own personal preference. Moving on to the drums. This is what the drums sound like. so you can see them all down here. They consist of a kick, clap and 2 hats. Now all these samples are from my Kaytranada sample pack. The link to that will be in the description below. There should also be a card popping up around here somewhere, which will take you to where you can download it. So Kaytranada's kick drums always have some weight to them, but also a tad of high end present, which helps them really cut through the mix. I actually think with how much space each bass takes up in a mix, having a little high-end energy on the kick drums is necessary to ensure that it doesn't get lost. Something I've started doing recently, and it could be a trick Kaytranada also uses, is splitting the kick drum into mono and stereo. So on this channel here I have a low pass filter, cutting everything above 200Hz out completely with a sharp Q, meaning everything under 200Hz is now in mono. I then got a second channel doing the exact opposite with the mid to high information of the kick drum in stereo. Now you can even go as far as to add some stereo widening effects to it. It depends on your own mix and again personal preference. This helps the kick drum cut through, especially in a crowded mix. Now everyone's always lived under the impression that a kick has to be in mono. Not true. Low frequencies should be in mono for maximum impact, hence the splitting of these 2 tracks. I'll also do this on the master bus, but I'll show you that later. I'll just show you how my kicks are sounding. So this is just a mono one. And this is just a stereo. And then together. Moving on to the snares. The snares are usually pretty tight, either being entirely a clap or having a clap laid in there. Listening to You're the One from his 99.9% album, you can hear how he alternates between a snap and a clap for his snare sound, hitting on the 2nd and 4th beat of the bar. The snares also seem to be pretty wide. I've noticed in a few of his interviews he mentions the Neptunes as being an inspiration. This could be from where he draws the idea from. I had a little play with some stereo widening effects on the clap and ended up settling on the hats technique. I've applied this to the hats too, but I'm also pretty certain that Kaytranada is also using this technique to create the stereo wideness in his sounds. For those that don't know, the Hass effect is a psychoacoustic effect. When 2 separate versions of the same sound occur in rapid succession, separated by only a few milliseconds, our brains will fuse these 2 sounds into one. So in Ableton to replicate this, I've took this simple delay and delayed the left channel by 33 milliseconds. Now I'll just before and after this so you can hear what I'm doing. So this is with the stereo widening effect. It's actually 15 milliseconds, sorry, but anything under 40 milliseconds should work. And this will be without. So you can hear the width it's putting on the clap there. My best guess is this is what Kaytranada is doing to his clap in this record to get it so wide. This can cause phase issues when converted to mono, so make sure you check for that. I've also used this on the hats to push them out wide, but it can also be applied on vocals, synths, just about anything. Now the patterns are usually pretty standard for house music, with a 4/4 kick drum and some hi-hats to add some interest to the beat. In Kaytranada's version of this track, there are also some cowbells playing in the background. I've noticed in a lot of his house tracks and his remixes, he adds in some extra percussion sounds, which is always cool. Now there's a heavy J Dilla and Madlib inspiration behind Kaytranada's both drum selection and his arrangement. Everyone knows him for his house style music, but he really did show his versatility on his new album. Listening to tracks like Bus Ride, you can hear this with the live sound and intricate drum grooves. There's nothing too fancy going on with the mix in here. As per usual, I like to pick sounds that are as close to what I'm after as possible. We've got an EQ on the drum bus, cutting out anything under 50Hz to keep it out of the way of the bass. I've also scooped out around 500Hz to remove some muddy frequencies. This tends to be a pretty standard practice on most sounds actually. The last thing worth mentioning on the drums is bus compression. The way Kaytranada gets his drums so glued together is through using this technique. It's pretty common nowadays, but if you're not playing with it, make sure you do. Parallel compression might also be something worth experimenting with. So that's mixing a heavily compressed signal with a lesser or uncompressed version of the same sound. This helps bring out some of the details or tails of the signal. Onto synths. As you may have noticed, I haven't got any synths in this remake, but I do want to speak on them for a couple of minutes. If you're new to synthesis, check out our tutorial program named Synthorial. I'll link it up in the description. Rather than just watching videos, They set challenges for you to complete in the form of creating sounds by ear. Just a disclaimer though, they are in no way affiliated with myself, but I do think it's a really dope program for learning how to create your own sounds from scratch. As well as that, there are subreddits on Reddit for asking how to create certain sounds from your favourite records. Now, from listening through Kaytra's back catalogue, you can get similar sounds to his using plugins such as Serum, Mini V, or any of the Artaria plugins actually, Silent One, Massive, the list goes on. I think the important thing here is to learn how to create synth patches from the ground up. Then you will have the building blocks to create any sound you wish. Onto the vocals. So the vocals in this track are obviously just Janet Jackson's acapella for If, which I've chopped up and rearranged to fit. Kaytranada left the acapella at the original pitch too, which I found interesting. I always thought it was pitched up for some reason. The only thing that I've done to this was sidechaining it to the kick drum. This brings me on to my next point, sidechaining. Kaytranada is big on sidechaining, like really big. A lot of people new to music production struggle with this. Sidechaining, also known as the pumping effect, is where a sound will dip up and down in volume to another sound that's triggering it. The easiest way to think of sidechain compression is to imagine an announcer speaking over music. Every time he speaks, the compressor will push the music out of the way, and when he's finished, the music returns to its default level. If I solo the vocal and the kick drum, you'll hear what I mean. It's used as an effect in this style of music, but it's actually a really smart mixing technique that's used in other genres. It's just overemphasized in this style of music to create that pumping effect. I spent some time playing around with different processing techniques in this track to get everything sitting right, but truth be told, it's a really fun genre to mix. Onto my mastering chain. I have my own mastering template that I've developed over the years of trial and error. A couple of plugins from that chain are the BX Control 2 from Brainworks. This is a Swiss Army knife of a plugin for having on your master output. It allows you to check the left and right channels, mid-side, mono, phase invert and plenty more. I'm using it to make everything under 200Hz mono and boost the stereo wideness of the track by 25%. That's what mastering is really, plenty of little adjustments in just the right spots. I've also got two PSP old-timer plugins, one compressing the middle and another the sides. These just work some magic on records, they really sweeten up the high details in tracks. I've also got a PSP warmer plugin, which is acting basically as a limiter. I don't need the L2 on the end here, but I just love the plugin so much, I'm always using it. So that's it for this one guys. If you made it this far in, please drop me a comment to let me know. Make sure you click that little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified when a new video is up. Thank you for everyone's continuous support, I appreciate each and every one of you, and until next time, I'm out. Peace.